Witness, an international NGO, put out a damning report about the nature of the negotiations between the government of Guyana and ExxonMobil. I think generally, without getting into specifics, that the report pointed out to the entire world and to Guyana, Guyanese in particular, the ineptitude, incompetence, and the duplicity of this government and how underserved we were in those negotiations. Now, I saw the government spinners and people sympathetic to them starting to shift the narrative from the incompetence and possibly large-scale corruption to trying to discredit the report, the organization that issued the report, and somehow make it political. So suddenly Global Witness, an international NGO that has been around for ages, becomes a friend of the PPP, and the PPP instigated this report and the timing of its release. That is what the government spinners are carrying. One would recall that this is the very government that hangs on tenaciously to every scrap of positive news that any international organization mentions about Guyana to prove the case that they're doing a good job. So we've seen them doing that with several organizations. Just a couple of weeks ago, Transparency International had some positive news on Guyana, on the Corruption Perception Index, and I dealt with that, how that happened. And, they were busy touting this international organization as being great. But when other credible international organizations have, for example, this to say, like this report that we saw, the damning report, suddenly they're not to be believed, or they're people from the PPP. Well, let me say, the People's Progressive Party did not bring Global Witness here. We have no such power over Global Witness, which is an international NGO. And I suspect that their presence here was largely triggered by this government's own act, which, when it said that SARA was going to investigate not the ExxonMobil contract or the Tullow giveaway contract where there is zero royalty, but it wanted to investigate contracts that were signed, the prospecting licenses under the PPP. You'd recall that SARA launched such an investigation. And then they hastily dropped it when it was proven that one of the members of SARA, Mr. Phillips, had himself been part of a consortium that had applied for a prospecting license. Of course, they never advanced those investigations. That is, SARA never advanced those because there was nothing to find. We made it clear that even those contracts signed under the People's Progressive Party would be renegotiated and would be subjected to a standard PSA in the future when it comes to production stage. They were prospecting licenses. And they were signed pre-oil, before we knew we had oil. So I thought that put Guyana on the radar, and Global Witness then came here. And the result is this report. Now, I've seen some of the most lame explanations, and really, people, they believe that Guyanese really, really, really stupid to give these explanations to our people. But they knew about this report. They knew about Global Witness presence in Guyana, and apparently they came since March, June or July last year. They've been here. And therefore, the government commissioned a report in September from Clyde and Company. Now, I'm wondering is why would you want to do such a thing? Why, if you're not even charged for a crime, you don't know the nature of the report that Global Witness will put out. They just came here and started asking a few questions. Why would you in September last year hire a company to, and we'll talk about that in a moment, the company that they hired, hire a company to do a rebuttal of what will come out in a report. You don't even know what the report will find as yet. It's like taking a lawyer, somebody says, you know, I'm looking at possibly crime committed in Guyana, and you hire a lawyer before they start the investigations, not even before when the charges are laid on you, or you've been accused of anything. It is because I think they knew that there will be an adverse finding. There will be a major adverse finding, and all the shenanigans that took place in these negotiations would have been revealed. And so they hired a company to rebut this. We don't know how much Guyana paid Clyde and Company. And that, again, is a secret. How much did we pay this company, the taxpayers of Guyana, to rebut the Global Witness report? And we'll come to that. But that was not only the, so let us talk a bit about the findings of the Global Witness report. So they came up with a number based on a projection of future revenue and how much we would lose. Now, the number could be $55 billion in losses, or it could be $70 billion. But clearly, the point is that we were underserved in the negotiations. Guyana did not get its fair share of the deal. That's a key point. You can differ on the number. So they say the number is, I've seen the government and some of their cronies and some who get invited to the oil companies, parties, etc., coming out and defend that. But these same people are then using Rystad number as gospel. Rystad is a company that have worked for oil companies before. And so they're using that as gospel to try to rebut the Global Witness report, but then question Global Witness's calculation. My point is that I don't know what this number is. It could be $55 billion, it could be $40 billion, or it could be $70 billion, depending on the assumptions. And so we have to know what those are. But go to the content of the report. So the government is spending, Global Witness did not find real corruption. Well, they asked for certain, Global Witness is an international organization. They're not going to be accusing people just like that. But they raised quite a few questions. They said, one, there was a key link and a possibility, a major possibility of a conflict of interest in these negotiations. We had pointed this out before. I just here pointed out that the address on the ExxonMobil contract, when it was revealed to the public after a big fight, the address, Exxon's local address was Nigel Yu's law firm. that was in the that's in the contract on behalf of ExxonMobil. And I pointed out that he was a senior leader of the AFC. His wife is a minister in the cabinet, and another leader of the AFC and another member of the cabinet was on the other side negotiating. Now, is that not a conflict of interest? That's what the Global Witness said, that should be investigated. A conflict of interest. I saw a lame explanation from Mr. Hughes that, oh, he had resigned from the AFC formally, but the fact is that he still had connections to the cabinet and to the people who were sitting on the other side, and that he was out of politics. But I seem to recall that in November, it was last year, not before the local government elections, he was on an AFC platform in Bartica. So that was just before local government elections in 2018. He was there too. And I've seen him speaking at several AFC oil functions that are arranged, symposia on oil and gas, etc. So is that not valid? Is that not valid? They would try to gloss that over. The government apologists gloss that over. Two, they pointed out, Global Witness report pointed out, that there was a rush, a refusal of exports advice. A refusal of exports advice. Trotman refused the advice totally. And this is really bad because there are two sections, two persons, just the weekend before he signed the deal. They sent the agreement to two exports, and both said to him, both of those exports said, do not rush. Do not rush. At least we should await the results of the announcement of the results on Lisa 2, which will put you in a stronger negotiating position. Do not rush. He disregarded that and over the weekend signed the agreement on the same day that Exxon was supposed to announce the result of Lisa 2. So they rush to do this. Now, I have seen Nagamutu saying in yesterday, I think it was, February 5th, that the reason that they rushed to sign is that instead, he says this, Prime Minister Nagamutu Tuesday night condemned a Global Witness report that concludes that the 2016 ExxonMobil amounts to a $55 billion giveaway, instead saying that the government fast-tracked negotiations to prevent the company from pulling out due to Venezuela's claim. So, Venezuela's claim to our territory started since 1960s, the 60s. Exxon knew of this claim when they signed the agreement in 1999 and when they were exploring all along. To think that they're so stupid, that we Guyanese are so stupid, that they will wait until they find oil to then, if you don't sign a new agreement within days, that then they will pull out because of the claim. This is the asinine explanation that we are getting from the Prime Minister of Guyana. And I've seen all of this talking about national strategic interests and all of that. The apologists about, oh, Venezuela, this was done for Venezuela. In fact, their own report, Clyde and Company, dispels this, the report that they commissioned. And it says here that one of the reasons that they gave is that the people, the rig, they needed an urgent report, a signature. That was what Exxon said. So because of I'll find this section, because of that their rig, the vessel, the rig that was doing exploration was pulling out quickly. I'll find it in a moment. I'll come back to the report for that. So they contradicting what they're saying now about national strategic interest. That's why they rush. I can understand a national strategic interest in having a presence off the shore, but not to accelerate a negotiation when the people have found billions of barrels of oil. So it's utterly nonsensical. Then we had Carl Greenidge himself pointing out that he knew of this report since New Amsterdam, and he knew about the adverse report, so he started running down the company. Not the company, but Global Witness. So we have had a bunch of excuses from the government. So I don't want to get into the quantum, but the report raises several things. Truckmen being feted by the company. 2, that truckmen ignored experts' advice. 3, that he rushed to sign these negotiations. 4, there was a conflict of interest situation. These are all critical, and 5, we're underserved in those negotiations because there was no technical advice. So I just wish to point out at that time, we still have, there's so much opaqueness in this whole deal. Until now, we're not clear about everything. So, first of all, about the escrow letter. We're yet to see that. The bridging deed and the circumstances why about the bridging deed. Why it was signed and how it was signed and who negotiated that and all of those things. Thirdly, when a minister of finance a couple of days ago said he doesn't know about the signing bonus, how it was negotiated, and he thought it was a gift, it still leaves a lot of opaqueness in this regard. 4, who negotiated? We heard 3 names. Global Witness said they could have identified 3 persons, but who were the others who negotiated? So there are lots of things we yet to discover, and I suspect when we discover these things, we'll find a cesspool of corruption and incompetence. They're busy doing damage control, making it look, oh, this is the PPP thing. It's not PPP. This is a report about this. And the people have had a chance to look at this in greater detail. By the way, I don't want to deal too much with that, but there is another set of emails going around, apparently shared, which could really lend clarity, because I've asked about key events in those emails, which seem to be of a more personal nature. But I've asked about key events and timelines, and it seems as though those are entirely consistent with what Global Witness have pointed out about the rejection of advice and the incestuousness and the personal contacts and how this whole issue was negotiated, and about perks and vetting and all of that. So, coming back to the report itself, the report that they paid, we don't know how many millions of dollars to rebut the Global Witness report. So this report says, Clyde and Company report regarding our independent investigation into the circumstances leading to the execution of the petroleum agreement dated 27/2016. If they're paid by the government, then there's no way this could be an independent report. This is a private law company. They're not, I suspect they're not working for free. And it would be interesting to find out, as I said before, how much was paid to them and by whom. Was it the government of Guyana or an oil company? But by no means whatsoever is this an independent report, because if you're working for a client, then your report. Nevertheless, what reinforces that view is that they made several trips to Guyana, and the people that they placed in the report that they met with were Trotman, Greenidge, Dennison, Homer, Simmons Homer, and Christopher Lynch. These are only the people. They never sought to meet with members of civil society or the opposition, so this can be termed an independent report. This is a report to justify how they signed the agreement. So anyone who attempts to portray this as an independent report will be misleading the people of Guyana. Thirdly, it says on the 30th of January 2020, they submitted the report to the Ministry of Natural Resources. So one would surmise from that the ministry paid them to do this report if they submitted the report. The ministry was the client. But the company, this is a reputable company. So the company made it clear, we have prepared this report on the basis of the information that the Ministry of Natural Resources and GGMC provided to us during the course of phases 1 to 3 and the interviews referred to above. And they only interviewed these 5 persons. So obviously, it's only on the basis of documents provided by the ministry that they prepared this report, not documents provided by anyone else. And then they said they did some online searches. So the conclusion, and this is where the company, for its own credibility, said, overall, the 2016 agreement, listen to their own report saying, overall, the 2016 agreement contained some improvements in comparison with the 1999 agreements. And there are also changes that were of benefit to the contractor consortium. So they said, those have not been enumerated, but they said, oh, we moved from a couple $100,000 to $1 million here, and the royalty from 1% to 2% from the prospecting to the production license. They enumerate what those are. But this clause in their own report, this sentence, there were also changes in the 1999 report that were of benefit to the contractor consortium. We need to know what those were and how much they cost the country. So you don't hear, this is their own report. Secondly, this report of theirs said that Trotman sought cabinet guidance before the negotiations. So it says point 28, that's 2.27 of the report. 2.8 of the executive summary says, Honorable Minister Trotman prepared and submitted to the cabinet a cabinet memorandum setting out the background to the suggested course of action with the 2016 agreement. The cabinet therefore were provided with a briefing in accordance with standard practice. The cabinet memorandum was discussed and the proposal was approved by the cabinet. So we are hearing now that this is all Trotman and that he did it on his own. Now, their report, Trotman's report that he commissioned, is saying that he prepared a cabinet memorandum with all of these terms, the giveaway terms, and sent it to the cabinet. They discussed this, and then they approved it. So now listen to this. Contrast this with Jordan saying, I don't know about this in the negotiations, the 18 million, how it came about. But this report is saying that, if we to believe their own report, that a memorandum went to the cabinet outlining these terms. He's saying, I don't know about this. I thought it was a gift. Contrast this with Granger saying after this, he's never seen the report. He's never read the agreement, but he approved the negotiating strategy we're hearing now. So this report that they commissioned has raised hundreds of issues more for me now, has clouded the entire atmosphere. But when you lie, you get contradictions. They've been lying about the circumstances of the negotiations. This is where this is important for us, that we look at these contradictions here. So we need to look at the contradiction in their own report as to why, as I said before, they claim the urgency not to displace Exxon's rigging their drilling activity in their report, and then they claim by their cronies and everyone else. I see some of them who, I don't want to call names now, but some fossils, G.H.K. Lal and all of them getting into this. Never one single day they dealt with national strategic matters, but suddenly they're pontificating on the reasoning behind. They don't even know what is going on, but suddenly they're parroting the line. And this and Nagamoto. Check the contradictions, even in their own reports. So I would urge a careful reading about both the report that they commissioned and the report issued by Global Witness, and then all of the stupid, unbelievable explanations they're giving by their spinners. I saw the DPI put out a statement there that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And they're quoting people from international organizations, misquoting some of the people. But everybody who said something favorable about it, because they have their own, and lots of them are working for the government or working for the oil companies. Follow the ones who are making these comments and trace their background, and you will see what I'm talking about. But as far as I'm concerned, the connections, those issues about conflict of interest and everything else, they warrant for the explanation, the investigation. And there's one thing that this country can conclude, is that we were just caved into pressure, just gave away our birthright, that we're underserved by this government. This is an incompetent government. Now, there are lots of things we have to fix in the future about this agreement and etc. So I just wanted to deal with that issue. I have a ton of things more, but I'm not going to belabor the point on it, because by now I hope that all Guyanese will look into this matter. So let's come to some practical issues. So Statia boasts about $226 billion being collected in 2019. We are using the projected figures for 2019. When we said $88 billion more per year is collected in taxes. Well, now it's 91 when you have the final numbers, because in 2014, the last budget that the PPP had was $135 billion in total taxes. In 5 years, this has gone to $226 billion per year. So that means that this government is collecting $91 billion more per year in taxes. The government that came into office on a promise to lower taxes, that it was too much of a burden on people, collecting $91 billion more per year from our taxpayers. So this is now confirmed, and it has gone up. I was using the $88 billion figure all along, but now that we have the final numbers, that is it. And these are people here. Poor people are paying these too, as well as wealthy people. Everybody is paying more taxes, like on water and electricity, on everything, on everything. That's what. And they're proud to announce this, proud to announce how much they're taking out of people's pockets. $226 billion. Arbitrary assessment. If you go to GRA, almost every person, businessman who's had some dealing, would speak about the arbitrariness of GRA, how they increase people's values, and then as a result, because it's an ad valorem tax, taxes go up, pushing up the cost of living, everything. That's not going to change until the government changes, because they'll keep harassing people and raking in more and more taxes to be spent on useless things, on perks for ministers, etc. So that's one. It's 91 billion now. You'll hear me revise that figure up. Secondly, I see in Granger now starting to plan. My plan is to provide jobs for our youths. Didn't we hear this in 2015? That their plan was to put everyone to work that was not working under the PPP, and that the young people would have been getting jobs within 1 year of graduating. He'll find a job for you, etc. Well, the plan, he's dusted out the plan again and brought it forward. And to say, so the reality is that over 30,000. I used that 30,000, that was last year, but we're stuck with the 30,000 figure. But since then, you probably had another 5,000 or 6,000 people more who lost their jobs. But let's be conservative. Let's say 30,000 people have lost jobs under his leadership. He has absolutely no plan for anything, for production, nothing. Not oil and gas. Where are you going to get the jobs? In oil and gas? Where they don't have, with the contract that they signed and not looking out for Guyanese, which sector? But more importantly, I looked down the number and I couldn't believe it. And this is the Chronicle. And Chronicle faithfully reports him. And so he says, President Granger says coalition plans to provide 10,000 jobs during decade of development. So that means a decade, 1,000 jobs per year. In the decade of development, which starts from 2020 to 2030, that's his decade of development, he's going to provide 10,000 jobs, 1,000 a year. We have 30,000 people who lost jobs under him. We have more kids coming out, more than 1,000 kids graduating from UG per year. We got more than coming out of school, etc. And he's providing 1,000 jobs per year. This guy is unbelievable. I mean, couldn't believe it when I read the Chronicle. 10,000 jobs in a decade he plans to provide. We're going to have in a decade with our scholarship program, the 20,000 online scholarship and the children going to university, you're going to have maybe 35,000 people who will be with a degree. 35,000 people in not just a decade, because our plan is for up to 2025. We're going to have about 30, 35,000 more people with degrees. And he plans to produce 10,000 jobs from 2020 to 2030. This is the vision that they have. That is why they can't think big for the future. This is Granger and Nagamootoo and this cabal. They just, like the airport was too big. That's why they corruptly reduced the number of gates and stuff. You have to think big for the future. The Marriott would have never been built had these guys been in power for a while. They didn't do anything now. We have to come back in and build 4 new hotels, starting 4 international hotels, so that thousands of Guyanese can work there. You can have lower rates, more people will come here, more jobs for our people. And that will start from day one. They don't think about anything. So this is Granger's job plan for you now. So people have it from his mouth, officially now. 1,000 jobs per year in the next decade. 1,000 jobs. Oil and gas alone, we'd have to force Exxon and the others to spend more here through legislation. Through legislation, spend more on business, hire more of our people, and pay them a proper wage, not give the foreigners one wage and our people get a small amount. We'd have to force them to do that by legislation. Look at what's happening now in the Berbice River. The ministers are they did a show. Imagine they brought in Roussel and the company and they televised the whole negotiation just to say, oh, we are strong, we are looking out for your interests. And I'm not really useless, almost like begging, pleading. They're just a show they're putting on. Now, 900 of our people there will not work. And then Lincoln Lewis seeks to blame the PPP. Somehow PPP must speak out. The opposition must speak out. He's not calling on Granger to speak out. And by the way, coming back to this whole thing on oil and gas, do we have a ceremonial president? Not a word from him. He operates as though no report has come out, no global witness report, nothing. He's not said a word about any of this big expose of his government, corruption and the incompetence of his government. And he might very well have approved that because his own report said it went to his cabinet, the deal. But again, Lincoln Lewis and the others don't mention a word about Granger. Why doesn't Granger speak on those 900 workers who are there and tell them what he's going to do for them? He wants us to speak. Well, we will after March 3rd, and you will see the difference. We will. So the big show that they put on for the workers by televising the negotiation. Granger says, again, we'll return the sugar industry to profitability. Can you imagine this now on the campaign trail? Must be going mad. After 7,000 people you put out, because everybody is saying, you got to stop cussing the PPP and talk about what you're going to do. But he produced 10,000 jobs in 10 years, 1,000 a year, and he wants to return sugar to profitability now. Well, who would believe him? Who would believe anything that Granger or the others say? They can write a manifesto this thick, bring in anybody to write it this big. I wouldn't believe a single word, because they've been proven untrustworthy. They've been proven that. They broke every single promise. What's to stop them doing it again? Nothing. And they're only out there now because they need votes, misleading people, including, so he wants to do cash grant to the children now, after taking away their money, after seeing what the PPP has done. So again, another fake promise by Granger, the sugar workers. Then he announces a squatter resettlement initiative. But, you know, I thought they had a housing initiative the last election. Now it has gone to a squatter resettlement initiative in this campaign. Because he's right to do that, because they fail on the housing. They gave away their cronies over 60,000 acres of land, about 10 of them. didn't develop no new house lot. Now they're busy clearing some pieces of land and giving people papers, little slips like that. They increased the taxes on building material, the VAT on sandstone, cement, etc. The other hand, the ministers and everybody got their land. And so now he is moved to a squatter resettlement now. So we don't have any housing program. That's his new promise in this campaign, squatter settlement. The only thing they're going after now, every meeting, is the troubles. The PPP will kill your children, that's it, and if you're Afro-Guyanese, trying to stir up, drum up racism. Drum up, that's it. We pointed this as the only thing that they would campaign on. They have nothing. They can't talk about achievements or plans, so they'll try to divide our people again, and it's not going to work. Because even, why did he not hold the commission of inquiry? He had all the powers. He held about 8 of them already. Over $500 million spent on commissions of inquiry under Granger. But couldn't hold one to start with the day these 5 guys escaped and who helped them to get into Buxton and all the massacres subsequently. Because what you will find is the hand of the PNC in the entire process. From the lawyers who defended those criminals when they are caught, and by the police and the army, to calling them PNC leaders, calling them freedom fighters, people who were committing massacre on our people of every race, to their attempt to hide what took place at Agricola. You remember the infamous phone call between Basil Williams and Felix saying, boy, you help us there, after the Agricola massacre, to the supply of weapons, how the weapons that were given to the PNC in the 1970s, based on the Walter Rodney inquiry and the report, the documents that show they were handed over to the PNC, how did they end up in the hands of those bandits? Who was sending in supplies, SIM cards for them, change SIM card? Who used to go to the community and try to mobilize the kids and the women to block the army and the police when they go in there? Not a word in defense of all our policemen and the soldiers who were killed. Who did that? It was the PNC, APNU. And so that is why they would have never done the commission of inquiry. Never do a commission of inquiry into the matter. This is the so-called the period of the troubles. And then under his tenure as president, he over 600 murders, and he doesn't have any solution for it. And now I see them bringing up crummy wing again, election time. You've had all these years to investigate. You've charged people for crummy wing's murder. Now it's crummy wing again because it's election time. So this is the only thing that they're campaigning on now, cussing the PPP and trying to stir up our people. They can do nothing else. And then they go on to Annette Arjun, Brother James watching Annette Arjun, not James, Raymond. Right, yes, watching this one. Really, this is the most low-life kind of sort of thing that I've ever seen or heard in my life. You don't even know the man's name. You don't even know the man's name. You show up and then say, oh, the guy would have voted for APNU if he was alive. And I don't want to say who the guy would vote for, because I've seen some things like pictures of him going around with some of our people. But this is the worst form of what I can't find a word to describe this. Desperation. This is desperation. It is, when you go to a funeral, you don't even know the person. And, and you're talking about this person would have voted for them and look what we did, etc. It was a disgusting display from a minister. And that is what they're about. That is what the desperation is reflected in this sort of behavior, in pulling down flags, in harassing people like Figueroa and the others in Linden, trying to harass Hugh Todd and Sam Hines, and many other communities where they're trying to, like Gillian Burton in parts of, I think it's Stokborg in New Amsterdam, where they get a few people, not the community, not many people from the community, but a few of them who try to harass people who are carrying their message. And our message is for everyone, all Guyanese, people of every race. And it's about what we will do. When we said we will lower taxes on vehicle, and we will remove the restriction, the age restriction they put in place, and remove the cost of the used tire, remove the ban from used tire, it would help the miners. It would help people in the forestry sector. It would help business. It would help people. The vehicles can drop as much by $1 million, the price of a car can drop by as much as $1 million, a used car. That is not for PPP people alone. It is for every Guyanese. When we said that we're reintroducing this grant and increasing it to $50,000 per child, it's not for children of people who vote PPP alone, or people of one race or religion. It's for every Guyanese child. The same thing with our pensioners. $40,000 per month, it's for all of our pensioners. That will put 45 million US more in the pockets of our pensioners. That's $9 billion so they can spend, and 8 billion to our kids more. And that's per year. Now that will mean per year. So when you think about that, pensioners, and this is, I'm just talking about the growth, because if you add the other 45, the pension that they get now, that's about 45 million US dollars. So you're talking about $18 billion to the pensioners and another 8 to the children. That's $26 billion more back in circulation, in disposable income that they can spend in the markets on taxi services and a whole range of stuff. That is what we plan to do. When we talk, we've already started putting in place the criteria for the access to the scholarship, 20,000 online scholarship. And this must be for children right across Guyana, of every race. Your politics would not matter, like how we did the one with the doctors abroad, or free university. These are for universal. The 50,000 house lots at 100,000 each will go to Guyanese of every race. That is what we are doing. But they are busy pushing they're trying to divide our people, and they have no message. That is what we take our messages to the community. And you know what they're worried about? They're worried about people hearing these messages. That's why they try to intimidate our speakers or bully them and come with loud horns and stuff like that. Because people are listening, and they know that their lives will change for the better in a very practical, specific way. Not like, oh, green state economy or decade of development. We had practical things. Look at the entire hinterland. I speak about this all the time. All the hubs that CATIUs boasts about, these ICT hubs, are left and paid for by money, 17.2 million US dollars that the PPP earned and left through the low carbon development strategy that they opposed. I saw Patterson now taking credit for the East Coast Road. And, putting this in ads and stuff, that East Coast Road started under the PPP. It's a PPP project. So they have done practically nothing, this bunch here, and therefore, they're worried about people listening to our messages. So they started putting up a couple of, like things there on the billboards, etc. Who believes them? Who believes this group anymore? They could put up anything. In fact, they were making some outrageous things that they would start supplying food to you at home. You don't have to cook anymore. So that's the kind of thing. So, these are just some of the things I wanted to talk to you, to address today, because to urge people and urge them that the campaign must continue without regard. We must not have inflammatory rhetoric, and we are prepared to sign to that. The last time the ERC sent us a draft, we're the only party that responded. The only party. We gave them a ton of ideas. I've seen now another draft come from the ERC. We've responded already. But they will have that signed when the elections are over, it seems. That is what the ERC seems to be heading for. When the elections are over, then to sign this code of conduct. Because no other party seems to be interested. And we have no leadership from the ERC to take strong action against people. I seen a minister at night, almost midnight, 11 in the night, with her husband, spewing vile racism. I've seen some of these small parties using caricature to stereotype political parties and people of different races. And not a single word of condemnation, although that is illegal. Illegal. Somebody needs to do this, the police, etc. We've seen inflammatory statements from Valda Lawrence. So whilst Granger is promising peaceful and free elections and Harman saying the same thing, they would not say a word about the inflammatory rhetoric on the platform for people, against people. So we need to have these campaigns done. On GCOM, we're busy checking the OLE now, so I don't want to be premature with our findings about whether the changes were accurate or they have led to displacement of people, and therefore we'll provide the details shortly about what our findings are, but right across the country, we're checking this, and to make sure that the list, they don't disenfranchise people because of either errors or a plot in GCOM to move people beyond the areas where they're supposed to vote, and that's what we're checking for now. Thank you.
Previously, we heard that from some of the commissioners at GCOM that the dual citizens who were on some of the party lists would be removed. Then later we got news that they would be allowed to stay on the list. What is your intelligence telling you, or perhaps the commissioners that you speak with, about why this decision was?
I have not spoken to any of the commissioners on this issue, because either way, whether people are on or off, it's not the PPP's mandate to decide that. It has to be GCOM's mandate, and they should follow the law. If the law says people have a right to be on the list, and then they should be on the list. If the law says no. So GCOM has independently determined this, not PPP, etc. That's not our call. Now, I've seen things about whether Gail Teixeira and the others have submitted. I have seen before Gail Teixeira went to the Canadian Embassy. She picked up her letter that she is no longer a citizen of Canada. She showed it to me, and she's prepared to submit that at any time if they so desire that. If I don't know what considerations GCOM made, whether the letter from the lawyer had an impact on them changing their mind, but that's a matter for GCOM. I don't know whether the people have, from what I gather, some of them received their letters of renunciation after the date. So I don't know whether that is an issue that influence them deciding this regard. But for me, if people are eligible to be on the list, they should remain on the list. What I'm more concerned about is the forgery and stuff. There are lots of people who are candidates for party or backers who never agree to this. And we have one case I told you about, who the guy came here, but he's now on another party's list. Okay. And he's a hardcore PPP guy.
So the Global Witness report said that Ghana would lose about $55 billion US. That could be disputed, but you accepted that the deal is bad. So could we say that the loss would be in the amount of tens of billions?
You notice I'm very cautious about doing that. That's why I said the range could be smaller or even bigger. It depends on the assumptions you use and the price of oil. A lot depends on the price of oil too. So they're just assumption-based estimates. And so when they criticize Global Witness, but hangs on to Rystad estimates, it just shows duplicity. It just shows duplicity. So you would find me very cautious about putting my neck on the block for any figure. I will say, let me examine the assumptions. And assumptions can, when the real situation, for example, if the price of oil escalates to, say, $150 a barrel, how would, in that scenario, it could grow, the loss could be even greater. It will be running into hundreds of billions of dollars, billions of dollars. So that is why they're assumption-based. My concern is about the dynamics of the negotiation, the conflict of interest, and the excuses that are made by an incompetent government, the refusal of export advice. Who would refuse export advice? If you're the smallest child in this country, and people say to you, if you wait 2 days more, you can, and don't sign this 2 days more, and don't sign this deal, then your negotiating power can increase substantially, because there will be an announcement on that day, 2 days hence, that could change the entire dynamics. Why would you have to, over the weekend, rush this? What strategic objective this could have with Venezuela? It is just some of this. It makes me really angry that people buy into this nonsense. That what strategic objective 2 days would 2 days wait would cause?
So you suggested better contract administration as a strategy for renegotiation. Do you think that could retain the sheer loss of revenue?
I think that I said a review. For example, their own report speaks about what we lost from the 1999 agreement, but they haven't spoken about what the elements are. So we'll have to look at that too carefully. And then once the review, I believe that we have to get more out of this through greater spending here, through a number of things. We have to get more money out of this, one way or another, as a country. And more employment and more business for our people. That is it, one way or another. And so that is our position on this matter, a thorough review.
You haven't commented on Global Witness's comments about the Kaichur and country block signings.
No, because that's why they made it clear that this was triggered by SARA. In the report, it says that they triggered by SARA, but SARA has not done much yet. They said the same thing, that we have never said anything that their findings contradicted their findings or anyone else. The agreements were signed by the PPP. They were signed, yes, close to the elections, but they were signed pre-oil, and they were part of a standard agreement that was signed before that. We never contested that, so that's why I'm not even going to contest it. I'm not defending it, because we never contested it, but we made it clear that those have to be renegotiated too. when we come to a production license, the prospecting licenses, and the conditions will change dramatically.
But the issue is was not the terms of the agreements, but okay, it stated that the NRGI described that very situation as a potential red flag for corruption. Where an inexperienced company gets the acreage and then quickly sells it off to a third party.
But my point is that we should have a thorough investigation of that too. We should have an independent investigation. I thought that is what Sarah would have done. We made it clear we're not opposed to an investigation on anything that took place prior to 2015. We would welcome an independent international investigation to that too. So we don't have anything to hide because we made it clear. Every production contract will be subjected, those signed under the PPP and follow on the orders to the standard PSA.
All right, lastly, what do you expect the president to come forward and say? What should he do?
Take responsibility. He's like Pontius Pilate. Everything is... This guy is in charge of this government the last time I checked. The last time I checked, he's still the president of Guyana. He takes responsibility for nothing. Absolutely nothing. And he is in charge. And his own report said he approved this deal. That is his report, saying that he approved it now. The cabinet, which he chairs, approved this deal. So it's not now Trotman alone, it is the entire cabinet. And I suspect that's why Trotman might have commissioned this report, to say it's not me, it's them too. So let's hear what they will say about this today. So that he takes no responsibility for anything under the sun. Not the corruption. He says, oh, we're this corruption, there's no corruption. And then clean president, honesty and decency. Good life. He takes no responsibility for the people who lost their jobs, they lost their income, etc. He's offering the good life to everyone. Speaks as though he's offering the good life to everyone. Takes no responsibility for the crime. He says, oh, so I offer solutions. I've appointed 4 deputies. Nothing. This is not leadership. It's just like, you haven't heard from, imagine a major scandal of this nature, and the president hasn't spoken. Days have passed, not a word from him about how he sees this. The country doesn't know what he's thinking here.
Jagdeo, I don't think Kemal went enough to the question as to the 3 presidential candidates whose citizenship was bringing into disrepute. This actually began with news entities taking quotes from one of the PPPs, the person sitting in GCOM representing PPP, Ms. Shadiq, right? And the next individual.
I don't believe that because a commissioner says something, there's a decision of GCOM. GCOM is made up of 3 commissioners who represent the opposition, but not everything we talk to them about, and 3 who represent the government, and 3 and the chair. They
As a result,
took
news article
okay.
quoting
Yes.
a PPP commissioner, right? Because GCOM did not issue a statement. It was it was an article, and the quoting commissioner suggesting that these persons might be removed from the list. Confusion ensued after that. Yesterday it was proven that they were never removed from the list. Not to say it is chronicle, which we know what is the modus operandi. But this happened, and a PPP. What do you call the person? A PPP nominated commissioner played a role.
Yes,
in this.
but listen. From what I gather, my briefing is that The commission decided. The 3 from the government, 3 from the opposition, and the chair all decided to take this decision. This was, and secondly, it decided to inform the police. From what I heard the CEO wrote the police about this, that the statements, the statements that you have to sign, the declarations, were falsely made. You can easily ask GCOM if that happened. Now, I wish, I shouldn't wish that, but that the PPP had so much influence to tell GCOM how to operate, because we would never be in this confusion. But now that they have, at this last moment, we have to go and verify all these names on the list. I wish we had that greater power in there, but this was a commission decision. We have no interest either way, if they're on the list or not, provided that it's lawful. We have no interest in getting people off the list or keeping them on the list. You have to act lawfully, and once they acted lawfully, they have a right to be on the list. That's our position.
No, but in light of what happened yesterday, it seemed like a smear campaign. Rather than something.
No. This is a GCOM. If any fault, you should ask the chair of GCOM. You should meet with the chair of GCOM and say, what went wrong here? Why did the commission vote on this matter? Why did the commission take this position? So shouldn't be directed to me. That should be directed to the chair of GCOM and the commissioners, the 6 commissioners, why they took that decision. There's been no instruction from the PPP to vote one way or another on this matter.
To some extent, you're respecting the Global Witness report.
I'm saying that the Global Witness, this government hangs on to every report that comes out which says a small favorable thing to them. Global Witness is just as credible as, say, TIGI, or not TIGI, Transparency International. But suddenly, when the report comes out, they're trying to make it look like we in the PPP brought the people here and we made them release this report, etc. That's erroneous. My point is that enough issues were raised there, but not for the first time. What they raised there has been raised by Guyanese, the newspapers, Kaichor News, and many others, yourself included and many others, long before Global Witness, who came up with a lot of these things. You know what? It took a foreign group to raise the same things we were talking about for it to get traction globally. Because we've been raising all these things all along about the opaqueness of the deal and the elements of the deal that are bad. Guyanese have been doing this for the last 3 years.
Why am I saying that? Is because you've been very careful to be discussing anything as it relates to revisiting contracts with ExxonMobil. No, this is very explosive.
Yes, but my point is that we are going to be the next government, because so we can't just run around and make all kinds of decisions on the basis of estimates, etc. We have to do an independent review to which we are committed. These are serious matters. You can't trifle with them, but we made it clear what we are aiming for, that Guyanese will benefit from these resources. They have to benefit more, our people. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much.